Good evening, everybody. Welcome to OLDHAM Council. You've got Andy Burnham here. I'm going to turn you around and you can watch the charade. I hope you've got the popcorn. We don't have to stand. We don't stand. Yeah, Andy Burnham's here. A lot of people. Are here and they've turned their backs.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this extraordinary full council meeting. Please may I ask my chaplain to say prayers. Let us pray. O God, grant each of us in this chamber openness of heart and mind to receive this report, to face up to events from the past and commit to creating a better future for Oldham's children and young people. Help us to debate with positivity, humility, respect, and an eagerness to learn from all who contributed to the findings of this report. Amen.
Warren Bates is here, Raja Mir is here, Moem Udin is here, Jackie Stanton is here. There's quite a few people here that a lot of people know.
Sheldon and Hindle. Madam Mayor, Councillor Ahmed as well. Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest. If any member has an interest to declare on any item in this
There's Montaz.
Please could you raise your hand so to declare. A form will also be circulated for completion.
Need to declare an interest because I was a witness in that form.
Anybody else? Try and sit here with the night boy.
Interest by virtue of employment by Greater Manchester Place.
Spouse works for the police, so personal interest.
Yeah, interest by virtue of receiving an occupational pension from GMP.
I declare an interest as well for GMP.
Personal will have judicial interest in GMP.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Receives a GMP pension.
Any more? Thank you. And we're now here to consider the independent assurance review of the effectiveness of the multi-agency responses to child sexual exploitation in Greater Manchester. Part 2 review into these historic safeguarding practices in the Borough of Oldham. I have had advance notice that Councillor Chatterton wishes to speak. Councillor Chatterton, please.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I wish to move that the Council resolves into committee to consider this item, which will allow members and officers of the Council and Greater Manchester Police to present and respond to questions received. The time limit for public questions is to be removed to allow questions received to be answered. Councillors and members of the public will also hear Malcolm Newsom, by way of video statement, Gerard Jones, the Council's Director of Children's Services, and Chris Bowen, Chief Superintendent for Oldham District. All group leaders or their representatives will be given the opportunity to respond. Public questions received will be read out by the Chief Executive and answered by the relevant person. Councillors can ask any questions they have to the panel, and the Director of Children's Services and Chief Superintendent to make closing statements. I therefore move that the motion that Council moves into committee, that public questions, Council procedure and rules be suspended for this meeting, and that Council agrees to alter the order of the agenda to allow public questions to be taken following the group leader speeches, with member questions being taken following public question time. Councillor Moores will second that motion. Madam Mayor, if I may, there's a minor amendment to that, isn't there? So the questions that have been received by the public will be read out by our Chief Executive, unless those people who have submitted a public question, they are here tonight and wish to read that out themselves, then they are welcome to come up to the lectern and read that out. Move, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Moores.
I second the motion. Thank you.
Does Council agree? Please show your hands. Those in favour agreed, and those against? Any abstentions? Motion carried.
Madam Mayor, just take 1 minute then whilst we convene the panel, if that's okay, Madam Mayor. So 1 minute whilst we invite the Leader of the Council, Andy Burnham, as Mayor of Greater Manchester. We've got seats here for Gerard Jones and Chris Bowen. If you want to take the seats, and then you can address the Council and members of the public as a panel.
Cover up, Keane.
Here he is, Mr. Andy Burnham.
Cover up, Burnham.
There we go.
Firstly, we will hear from Malcolm Newsom via video, one of the authors of the Independent Review.
Good morning, everybody. In November 2019, we were asked by Oldham Council and the Mayor of Greater Manchester to undertake a review into safeguarding practices in the Borough of Oldham. Our terms of reference required us to provide assurance regarding allegations made on social media about the risks posed to children in Oldham from child sexual exploitation. We were asked primarily to focus our review between the periods 2011 to 2014, but had authority to extend this time frame, if necessary, to enable us to provide the necessary assurances. We acknowledge the significant strength of feeling locally in relation to this review and the commentary on social media. We are very grateful to the many individuals who have given their time to support us in our work, and also the immense amount of work to recover the significant amount of documentary evidence we have reviewed. We believe we've produced a thorough, diligent and independent report.
That's bullshit.
Not influenced by any party. And have set out in the appendices the significant amount of evidence we have considered before reaching our final conclusions. We've set out in Chapter 1 a summary of our key findings. These are covered in more detail in the respective chapters that form the body of the report. Chapter 2 sets out our methodology and the timeline for bringing forward the report to publication. For legal reasons, our report also contains confidential appendices which will not be published. We've summarised the conclusions of these confidential sections in our published report. I'll now turn to our key messages. We found that throughout this period, the specialist services tackling child sexual exploitation provided by Oldham Council and Greater Manchester Police were strategically ahead of those available in many other local authorities at the time. However, these did not always translate at an operational level into the effective safeguarding of children experiencing sexual exploitation. Our own review of a sample of children has exposed significant failings in the protection provided by the statutory authorities to those children. We understand that Oldham Council and Greater Manchester Police have agreed to review the management of these cases to consider whether any further action can now be taken in respect of the men who exploited these children. We've been provided with no evidence to support the allegations circulated on social media to suggest that senior managers or counsellors sought to cover up either the existence of child sexual exploitation or the complexity involved in tackling the perpetrators. Turn to shisha bars now. A robust approach was taken by Oldham Council and Greater Manchester Police to the emerging threat of child sexual exploitation posed by shisha bars between 2011 and 2014. Nonetheless, we found evidence that a small number of children who were known to be sexually exploited were visiting shisha bars throughout 2011, 2012 and 2013. We have found no evidence that a BBC journalist, who we refer to as Journalist A, colluded with Oldham Council in not highlighting the potential threat presented by shisha bars. Quite to the contrary, we've seen clear evidence that Journalist A appropriately challenged and scrutinised the position held by both Oldham Council and Greater Manchester Police, and continued to investigate the story, which was eventually broadcast by the BBC. Residential care homes. We've been provided with no evidence to suggest there was widespread sexual exploitation of children in residential settings. There is evidence that some children in residential settings were being exposed to child sexual exploitation. Some of these children had suffered this abuse prior to their admission. There is also evidence that some children who had not been exposed to sexual exploitation were drawn into it through the encouragement of other residents. However, the evidence suggests that residential staff worked in a professional and supportive way with these children to win their trust and protect them as far as possible from further abuse. We have concluded that there were, throughout this period, legitimate concerns on the part of both the council and the police that the high-profile convictions of predominantly Pakistani offenders across the country could be capitalised on by a far-right agenda and lead to the victimisation of the Pakistani community. Wow. Social cohesion and far-right activity had been a consistent focus of the public authorities in Oldham since the 2001 riots. However, it is clear from all the evidence we have seen that the council and its partners in no way avoided addressing this, and in fact saw successful disruption and prosecution as the route to winning the confidence of all communities in Oldham. Taxi licensing. We have concluded that we've been provided with no evidence to suggest that senior managers or counsellors sought to cover up the potential exploitation of children by local taxi services. We have found that the council licensing panel had previously approved several licences to individuals who had been either accused or convicted of serious sexual offences. However, this serious weakness was recognised in subsequent years, and the council strengthened its licensing policies in line with the more robust national guidelines. I now turn to Sophie. We have considered a specific complaint by a person we refer to as Sophie. In 2019, Sophie wrote an open letter to the leader of the council, and in summary, this letter contains serious allegations that Sophie was subjected to profound sexual exploitation, and that Oldham Council and Greater Manchester Police failed in their duties to protect her. Sophie also complained that when these shortcomings were raised with both Oldham Council and Greater Manchester Police, they failed to investigate them appropriately and denied any failures on their part. We have concluded that the interventions of both the Council and Greater Manchester Police and the investigations into her allegations fell far short of what was required to protect Sophie, who was only 12 years old at the time of her abuse. Furthermore, we have concluded that these failures have been compounded by the denials that have subsequently been issued to Sophie and also to the chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee at the time. This lack of candour feeds a view that both agencies were more concerned about covering up their failures than acknowledging the harm that had been done to a vulnerable young person. We found no evidence that this approach was influenced by the leader of the council at the time or any other politician. However, we recommend in our report that both Greater Manchester Police and Oldham Council publicly acknowledge these serious failures and apologise to Sophie. We have also reviewed the cases of known offenders previously employed within Oldham Council, and we also considered councillors and others with positions in the council against whom serious allegations have been made. While we have included as much information as possible in our published report, for legal reasons we have placed some of the detail of our findings in a confidential appendix and have put our conclusions
I agree,
in
Mark.
the published report. We have concluded that there were a number of failings in the investigation of these cases, and these are set out in our report. I'll now turn to Offender A. A man we have called Offender A worked for Oldham Council between 1988 and 2006 as
Shabir
a
Ahmed.
rights officer. In 2012, he was sentenced to 19 years imprisonment for serious offences relating to child sexual exploitation.
Well done.
And in June 2012, he was found guilty of a further 30 rape charges and was jailed for an additional 22 years.
Well done, Oldham Council.
We have concluded that there were serious multiple failures by both Greater Manchester Police and Oldham Council to follow the procedures in place to investigate the threat he presented to children between 2005 and 2012.
And then hid it.
We believe that if the appropriate procedures had been followed, his offending behaviour could have been addressed at an earlier stage, and potentially the abuse of his subsequent victims may have been prevented. We have also considered the matter of a councillor we have called Councillor V, and the allegation on social media that he was victimised following the sharing of sensitive information in respect of shisha bars.
Hughie MacDonald,
We've
God bless
concluded
him.
that there was a legitimate concern by both the leader of the council and the Police and Crime Commissioner at the time that confidential information had been inappropriately shared with a third party by Councillor V.
No,
We
it
do not
weren't.
therefore believe that there were grounds to support the allegation that Councillor V had been victimised.
That's rubbish.
Finally, we also reviewed the matter of another councillor we call Councillor Z and the allegation that he was punished for being a whistleblower. We believe that there were some inconsistencies and false assumptions in the report produced by an independent law firm into the standards complaint made against Councillor Z. We acknowledge, however, that the law firm acted in good faith and that the council was not responsible for the content of the independent investigation report
That's laudable.
or in any position to require the independent investigator to reconsider or amend their view. In conclusion, we would emphasise that during the period covered by our review, the strategic intent of senior leaders in Oldham was to tackle child sexual exploitation.
No, it weren't.
And in that regard, they were ahead of many local areas.
Bullshit.
What rubbish.
Nonetheless, our report has uncovered historic failings in the protection offered to specific vulnerable children at that time. There remains an opportunity for Greater Manchester Police and Oldham Council to now work with Sophie and the other survivors we have highlighted in our report to ensure that every opportunity is taken to bring the perpetrators who abuse them to justice. Thank you.
Cover up.
That was Malcolm Newson that was talking by a video link. He's just told lies.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, thank you for everybody for being here today, so we can discuss the recently published independent review into historic child sexual abuse in Oldham.
Cover up.
This report has made it clear that horrific and inexcusable abuse of children took place in our borough. We, as a community, as parents, as a safeguarding partnership and as a council, should have protected those who were harmed, and we fell short. I know apologies cannot make up for the damage that has been done, but let me be clear to the people in this chamber and to the people of Oldham.
Correct, John.
That since that time, of which the report covers, significant changes have been made to how we protect children and young people now. We have had multiple offset visits and independent audits, and there's a much more focused and joined up and coordinated safeguarding approach in Oldham today than there was 8 and 20 years ago. We now have a greater focus on practical, on-the-ground support to children and families, so that strategies that are in place translate into real action in people's lives every day. We share information better with our partners, such as Greater Manchester Police, so whenever there are signs of potential abuse happening, our multi-agency safeguarding
Exactly, John Clifford.
ensures that we act quickly. We have now dedicated training officers for our schools so that we can teach young people about the signs of abuse and how to report them. Thousands of students underwent these sessions last year because we know the ownership is not on them to protect themselves. It is upon us as a community and as a partnership to help them be protected. That's why we've made further changes in relation to licensing, so that no person who's been convicted of a sexual offence can be granted a taxi licence. And we've ensured that more safeguarding checks happen at taxi ranks and offices.
Do you like to suspend the
If
taxi
there
driver?
are reports of premises being linked to potential CSE, a multi-agency response is triggered to gather information and take direct action to deal with those perpetrators. We have a new members' code of conduct in line with the Local Government Association advice on safeguarding, and further member safeguarding training. All members have undertaken safeguarding training in the last year. The messenger service, which was identified as failing in the report, was replaced by the Phoenix team in 2014, and this eventually transitioned into our complex safeguarding hub, which today is located with Greater Manchester Police and allows us to be much more coordinated in sharing of information and acting to identify and deal with these criminals who are probably not in this chamber tonight.
Oh, there's plenty of criminals in this chamber tonight, don't you think? Plenty of criminals in this chamber.
Through the proper investigatory arrangements. We've also ensured
Andy Burnham being one of them.
If a person goes missing For beyond 24 hours, we are having strategy meetings to look at each young person we're notified of to make sure that their safety is considered. It's also important to highlight that the culture we have now is collectively view children and young people has changed than it was in earlier times. Anyone aged under 18 being potentially coerced or abused is a victim, and their situation is quickly flagged as a concern. So let me make it clear that it's not their fault and we are on their side. Lastly, I would like to say that these changes were not in response to the independent review. These are changes that are gradually made year on year as we have developed and improved our safeguarding services in Oldham. We have learned from the appalling situations these children found themselves in and have improved, but we are not complacent. Tackling child sexual exploitation is a continuing journey, and we will work tirelessly in our efforts to protect children in Oldham. We owe it to all our children to be better, and we will continue to improve in the way that we are determined to do so.
All those that believe this, put your hands up.
Thank you. Finally,
All those that don't believe it, put a heart up.
Chief Superintendent for Oldham District.
Good evening. As we know, the safeguarding arrangements that were in place at Oldham Council and Greater Manchester Police during the period covered by the review were not good enough to protect children from sexual abuse. I would like to recognise those who for years have lived with these horrors, hurt and ongoing trauma for what has happened. I offer my sincere apologies for the failure to protect vulnerable children and young adults and for not thoroughly investigating the offences that have been committed against them. Today, I am taking part in this meeting alongside the Mayor and Oldham Council. I will offer no excuses for identifying failings, but will emphasise that we are on a journey of continuous improvement and that tackling child sexual exploitation is a top priority.
Bullshit.
Tackling and preventing child sexual exploitation in Greater Manchester and the support available to the victims is thankfully now worlds apart from where we were in the early 2000s. Since this time, our response and working relationship with agency partners is so much more robust, and there is well-established multi-agency response to CSE. I can confirm today that GMP has changed since the time covered by this review. To better understand and recognise when a child's behaviour could be the product of abuse, and that we have specialist officers who are trained to take appropriate action to protect vulnerable children at risk. We now have dedicated complex safeguarding hubs in every district, where multi-agency teams actively safeguard vulnerable children and provide specialist support to anyone who comes forward as a victim of CSE wherever they are in the region. This approach puts the victim at the centre of everything we do, which ensures that proper support is provided by the right agencies and any safeguarding concerns are addressed. GMP's Oldham District's dedicated multi-agency team specifically comprises of social care, health, victim support and SARC that have come together to make sure that victims and survivors are given the service they deserve. We did not wait for the review to remedy.
Give us time, Susan Miller.
Investigations are already well underway thanks to our investment of over £2.3 million into the Child Sexual Exploitation Unit in GMP. Our officers in this unit, who are dedicated to pursuing perpetrators and seeking justice for the victims of CSE, regardless of the passage of time, has been behind operations which have since seen a number of investigative results. Following the release of this report, more survivors may want to make contact with the police and other services.
Yeah, right.
This could include victims who have not previously known to GMP.
Wow,
So ahead of this publication of the Oldham CSE report, a further uplift to the CSE unit has been agreed to specifically focus on Oxford. The operation named for supporting CSE victims in Oldham, taking up to 106 officers pursuing offenders and seeking justice for those who should have had this support all those years ago. Whilst this will not compensate
No, they
for the
didn't,
horrific
John.
experience that these victims endured, it is our hope that our dedication to leaving no stone unturned
That's
and
right.
the clear, incomparable multi-agency response to safeguarding and tackling CSE will provide some comfort to those whom we have let down in the past. We may
Let
not
down
have
in the
got this
past?
right in the past, but now is our time to seek the justice that is rightly owed. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. You now have the opportunity for group leaders or their representative to respond. I call on Councillor Chatterton to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report obviously makes for very difficult reading, and on behalf of Oldham Council, I want to again apologise to all the victims referenced in this report, and particularly to Sophie. No child should ever have to endure what you did, and I'm deeply sorry for the way that the Council let you down,
Where's the justice
both
then?
as a child and as an adult.
Prosecution.
As I said last week, I'll be writing to the victims in this report to offer an apology and offer to meet them in person to discuss their experiences and learn how to
Good enough.
Prosecutions.
We've also put in
What does that achieve?
support for victims,
Doesn't achieve nothing.
including a dedicated team of trained professionals to take their call. All information of this support is available on our website. And we are also using this as an opportunity to re-educate people of the signs of CSE, and this information is also available on the council website. I want to briefly pick up on two areas. Firstly, the changes that have been made since 2014, which build on some of the work previous to this and referenced in the report, and also on the ongoing challenges children's social care continue to face today. The report makes clear that there is no evidence that there was any kind of cover-up between the council and Greater Manchester Police.
That's rubbish. That's rubbish.
This was an issue, and the Greater Manchester Wide Project Phoenix was set up in response to this. The then leader from 2011 was publicly open about the challenges and threat that CSE and grooming pose to our young people in Oldham.
That's right, George
They wrote
Uncle, it's
a public
not.
blog of this in 2014 that clearly set out the challenges.
Yeah.
It was also in 2014 that Ofsted held us up as an example of good practice for dealing with CSE. We were one of the first councils in the country to set up a multi-agency safeguarding hub with the aim of bringing officers from social care and the police together in one place.
Shame you didn't read
However,
it.
this report states that while there was a political and strategic vision to deal with CSE and grooming, this did not always translate to good working practice on the
No,
ground.
it's Scarface
Whilst
lies.
the report ends in 2014, I think it is important to highlight...
I don't know, Rachel. Either they were too scared to come forward, which is more the point. Rachel Brotherton, I think they were more scared to come forward. They're not believed.
Of the dangers of CSE and grooming. Towards the end of 2014, the Oldham Child Safeguarding Board commissioned an external independent auditor to assess Oldham's performance in meeting the challenge of CSE. A paper was also taken to our scrutiny committee as a discussion item to discuss what had been done and what more could be done to tackle CSE in Oldham. In 2015, the council was subject to a 4-week Ofsted inspection that concluded there are no widespread or serious failures that create or leave children being harmed or at risk of harm. It also highlighted good awareness raising activities and that the Phoenix team have been recently strengthened. These are tangible things that are a matter of public record that can be looked back on as a record of how the council responded to CSE. More recently, we have been subjected to focused inspections from Ofsted, the last time in December 21, where Ofsted stated, since the last visit, senior leaders have maintained a clear focus on keeping children safe and improving the quality of social work practice in Oldham. Children benefit from an effective range of support services. Social work is often purposeful and makes a difference to vulnerable children's lives. Senior leaders are ambitious and know themselves well. They understand that further work is required to a more consistent approach to the quality of practice across the service.
I think I should.
And I highlight this to finish on my final point, and that is the ongoing challenges facing children's social care. And we have to be honest about this. Today, we have more children open to social care than we ever have before. Roughly all
They were being failed.
All of Oldham's young people in this borough would fit roughly in the Etihad Stadium in Manchester.
You failed them.
They would fill the whole of those stands. The number of children open to us as social care would fill the away end of that ground. That is 3,100 children and young people that are currently at risk of abuse or neglect. I say this because we have to be honest about the numbers we are dealing with. That is an average of 600 referrals into social care every month at the minute, and that is 20 new children being referred to us every single day.
You just
But this isn't just about
numbers.
Oldham. This is a situation facing social workers up and down this country. Our social workers do an unbelievable job, day and night, 7 days a week, working to protect and keep safe some very complex and vulnerable children. And for the vast majority of those children, they get the support and care that they need. Social care protecting children is a continuous journey, and while the majority of children get the care that they need, one child let down is one child too many. We have to be better than we were last year, and last month, and last week. And we have to be better today than we were yesterday. And tomorrow we have to be slightly better than we were today.
No, a lot
but that is a
better.
challenge that
A
is
lot
never going to
better.
end. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Slightly.
I know, Joan.
It's not bloody enough.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Sykes to speak. Councillor Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The publication of this long-awaited report represents a hugely significant moment for this council and for victims of child exploitation. On behalf of the Liberal Democrats, I must thank the authors of this report.
Always thanking the authors of the book.
Newsom and Gary Bridgman for their hard work. Their findings are serious as they are damaging. They make for heartbreaking reading. It's right that the council should apologise to all victims of exploitation unreservedly. I am outraged, angry and disgusted. Over many years, I have asked questions of scrutinised, safeguarding matters. I was given complete assurances that the facts in this report are news to me.
Yeah, no.
Why did we not know this was happening? So, my first question tonight is what is different today, and how would we know if this or something else was going on? What has changed, and how are things different now?
What a rubbish
My
question.
second question is how many current members of staff at Oldham Council were involved in the cases and situations that have been reviewed? My third question is what processes, I hope, being underway, undertaken or even more hopefully completed to ensure that, given the stated levels of negligence, those members of staff are held appropriately accountable for their actions. My fourth question is how many current members of staff at GMP were involved in the cases and situations under review. My fifth question is what process is underway or completed to ensure that, given the stated levels of negligence, those members of GMP staff are held
We're not going to let them go, Dunkley.
accountable for their actions or inactions. My sixth question is what is being done to hunt down the offenders and bring them to justice. I would urge anybody else to please come forward with historical cases so people can be brought to justice. Anybody impacted by the issues of this review, please you now use the independent advice lines that are provided. Madam Mayor, there is an onus on all councillors and all groups here to drive forward change in this issue, whether we are in opposition or administration.
Can you turn them blowers off?
We have worked tirelessly
Turn the
to
heating
bring
off.
forward initiatives
It's a bit warm in here.
Well,
it's not.
This report is horrific. We
It's not.
fully accept the findings of the report and will continue to do all we can to ensure that no child is failed in the future. There are some key questions we need answers to, some of which I have just outlined. Several other questions will hopefully have a chance to be heard by my colleagues later tonight. And we have a number more detailed, yet important questions we'll be asking in writing and hopefully get a more detailed public response. Effective, honest and open answers to all the points that have been raised tonight will help to deliver some assurance
Peter Brown, Mark.
safeguarding in Oldham is where it needs to be. I do hope that will be the case. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
That was Howard Sykes, Lib Dem's leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Here she is. Remember she told me, Madam, will you shut up? You're rude. Do you remember? I remember.
Those who still suffer, especially those both male and female.
The signs say cover up.
Victims and the full weight of the law on grooming gangs.
Fliss, they all say cover up.
Victims are enough, and the administrations of those times must all be ashamed. That in naivety, inexperience and lack of empathy in some part that this ever happened. Historically, we appear to have named project after named project by GMP. Supposedly
Mark Kilgannon, yes I am.
And council departments. This obviously was not always the case, and we see a catalogue of failures. 1.38 in the report states, the review, not report, we see no response from GMP to the head of OLDHAM licensing on the request for information. And 1.6, please did not notify OLDHAM of an offence. Page 43 says that there was poor casework for police and social care. 3.21, the steering group fell by the wayside. The prevention arm of Messenger had fizzled out.
As you can see, this still goes screened in.
To the theatre project, Messenger says
we're all screened
each
in.
time there has been activity in these areas, the problem appears to go away. This led to the formation of the charity team. 3.8, there were 5 court cases and 6 convictions. There were only twice yearly meetings for some projects. The Council's Overview and Scrutiny Committee asked regularly for reports, but what did they do? They subsequently asked councillors to undergo training in relation to CSE. I could go on. The remit of this review was too narrow, with failings from GMP and OLDHAM Council apparent. And I and colleagues have always believed that any review should have been independent
there you go.
of the Greater Manchester Authority.
I agree. Hey! Anybody agrees with that? Put an out up.
An independent source of wider remit could produce answers not in this review or not able to be voiced here. For instance, did the victims ever see the same social worker more than once? How did the police and OLDHAM social services work together? Not effectively, it would seem. Too horrific or too difficult to deal with?
At Juggies.
This council were never going to come up smelling of roses on this one. A more natural fertiliser is needed before the air is cleared. We are told by a respected expert, Maggie Oliver, that this is still happening, and we sensibly know that this is true. I quote 1.4 at the beginning of this review.
Mark Lund, I fully agree.
Honesty and acting responsibly. This is not the end, but the beginning. This Conservative group asks for a further, fuller, independent report of public inquiry.
Hooray! That's the Tories.
Free of the Greater Manchester Authority. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Brian Orbin from the Failsworth Independent Party.
Before I get into the crux of the matter tonight, there's a few thank yous that I'd like to raise for people that, if it hadn't been for them, we wouldn't be in this place now. And although this place isn't where we want to be, these people have started it off, and they've kept it in the public agenda, and they're keeping it in the public agenda, and they're keeping us posted.
Well said.
Some people, Debbie Barrett-Cole, who's with us tonight, Roger Mia, Sophie in the report that is with us tonight.
Everyone in the chambers is standing up. Even disabled people are applauding. All right.
From this point forward, I will speak of Sophie as Sam, which she has asked me to do. And a further thank you to somebody who hasn't been very kind to myself, or members of my party, my colleagues, and the journalists that most people are aware of, who have been told has been great support for Sam. So, regardless of differences, I commend him for what he's done to help a victim. Madam Mayor, my emotions on this subject are varied. I'm disappointed, upset and I'm angry. As a new councillor 3 years ago, I asked members of this council for an independent, fully independent investigation into CSE in this borough. That request was denied by members in this chamber.
Shame on you!
At the time, the leader of the council, Councillor Fielding, dismissed all CSE.
Boo!
Declared bare-faced lies. From this report, we can see there's no bare-faced lies. Councillor Shah, latest council leader, admitted just last month that CSE has happened in this borough and that it continues to happen. And then we have Councillor
Who did blow up Jerusha's car? Did nobody know who blew up Jerusha's car?
Apologies.
Because it certainly wasn't us.
Lessons learned is a phrase I do not want away from this council. We're sick of it. Instead of an independent investigation, we was given this review.
Cover up.
Me and my team have not liked from the start, and I know that there's members in this house, in this chamber, that are agreeing with us. For me, this piece of work, really, having looked at it in the brief time that we've had it, should really begin in a nice covered folder saying once upon a time. Unfortunately, it seems like the executive and the administration of Oldham Council
Wouldn't surprise me, Bernie would, if she arranged to buy her own car.
ever after and close the ball. Forgetting everything that's gone past, saying everything is now for
Well, she did need a new car with a job role, yeah?
piece of fiction.
Hmm?
Piece of fiction.
She got paid out. Oh, there you go, you see.
And the sequel to it we've already been privy to, because the sequel to it, at the back of any good fiction, tells us that the next phase is going to be the Keystone Cops. A GMP in special measures are going to re-investigate what they failed to investigate before. I will justify my thoughts on the review.
Yeah,
It was a narrow time frame.
Andy Burnham's here. There he is.
He was given a too narrow time frame. We learned from the review 11 most concerning cases were given over. 11 most concerning cases were given over, but we don't know from how big a pool that was. Every case should be a concern. But strangely, of the 11 most concerning cases, the review team interviewed one victim. One victim. How can you write a review and interview one victim? There's a list, there's an appendix list.
Extensions now expired.
Can you believe that? Carry on talking, Brian. Carry on talking, Brian. Carry on, Brian.
People want to hear what he's got to say.
We want to hear what he's got to say.
We've waited 2.5 years and I would like to speak.
Address the public, Brian. Turn it back on Turn it back on Disgusting. Carry on, Brian.
Madam Mayor, can we suspend standing orders to allow Councillor Holman to finish his comments, please?
That's how it acts. It's saying, let him finish. Let him talk!
I will just repeat, all the other leaders of different parties have managed to get their point across in the time allocated.
That's because we all applauded him.
Any time later, please sit down.
I'll sit down.
Sit down, Brian.
That's the last one.
Okay, I'll go as fast as I can. The list of people not interviewed in this review is disgraceful. And the people that were interviewed and refused to sign it off shows how stupid and incomparable this review is with anything that this council leads. There is no accountability. There's nobody mentioned that we can attach to this failings that have gone on. I also understand that this council strongly resisted Sam being interviewed. They refused to admit about the member of staff from the Rochdale scandal. That, to me, is cover-up.
Cover-up.
There is also instances from one of the authors about caring more for covering up failings than the victims. And I'm going to finish this one. People in this chamber will not have spoken to a victim. I've spoken to a victim this week. A very, very brave young lady, still being punished by the authorities for being a victim. And when you go look at this report, and when you're asked about it, I asked Sam these questions and got these answers. So think of this. When I bring forward a motion for a full independent inquiry, members think of this, what Samantha said. It was not fit for purpose. It's not worth the paper it grows on. It goes nowhere near bringing justice for her or any of the victims. It is not worthy of this chamber, and we need more.
Brian, can you just take it back up, please? Thank you very much. Okay, let me remind you what the leader said as well, by way of introduction, that I will only ask out those public questions where I've been given permission to do so. Any public questioner who wants to ask their own question can do so, and we've got a lectern and a microphone available. Some have indicated that they'd like to ask their own questions, and that will be accommodated. A number of questions. I've got 35 questions from the public. For members in the room, you can get your turn after the public, so you'll be able to ask your questions and have further conversation. But this section of the meeting is to prioritise the questions that have been submitted by the members of the public. A number of them do overlap, so they'll be grouped. We'll ask out each question individually, and there'll be a response to them, but each question will be covered individually, regardless of how much of the overlap. And the first question is from Sam to Chief Superintendent Bowie. Do you think that those responsible for the attacks on me should be prosecuted? The police know their names. Do you think the PSP officers who covered up what happened to me and the failings of the officers around the time I was attacked should be prosecuted? Do you think the GMP Chief Superintendent who wrote to Mr Keith Baz MP should be prosecuted for saying that nothing was wrong with any actions of any GMP officers and all the investigations have been carried out well? Do you think that GMP should compensate me for personal injury and breach of my human rights? And lastly, do you think that GMP should share the costs of a good solicitor and barrister so that I can afford to pursue those claims? The response will be from Chief Superintendent Boyd.
Shame on you. We've not waited for the report to be published to pursue perpetrators, and 106 dedicated officers in our CSE union reviewing any and all lines of inquiry as part of Operation Sherwood. We are clear on this. Anyone who committed these crimes and thinks they've gotten away with it, regardless of the passage of time, we will come for you. We are keen to ensure that any individual or organisational learning from this is captured and reflected in our policies and procedures going forward, as we do with any review into operations and professional standards. Should any potential misconduct be identified, this will be thoroughly investigated by our professional standards branch through the appropriate procedures. It's important that we listen to you and address your concerns as fully as possible. And I understand there is a meeting arranged between yourself and the Chief Constable next month, where it is our intention to better understand your views and how we may be able to help you further.
Madam Mayor, the next question is also from Sam, and this one is addressed to the council leader. Does Councillor Chatterton genuinely believe that there was no cover-up in my case? Does she believe that saying it all happened a long time ago and things are better now is what I want to hear? Does she think that the council should bear the costs of a legal team to represent me in a personal injury and human rights claim? Will she be referring those that failed me in the council to the police for criminal investigation? There is a dispute over assertions by social care staff that Sophie did not want to cooperate with the review. When pressed, they insisted an approach could be detrimental to her welfare. This is significantly at odds with the account Sophie provided to the inquiry. When given the opportunity, she was happy to cooperate with the review at length. Will any investigation be undertaken to establish if any members of Oldham Council staff acted dishonestly in their dealings with the inquiry as regards Sophie's evidence? Furthermore, will the inquiry investigate whether this was as a result of a desire to cover up the failures by individual staff members and Oldham Council as an organisation? Information regarding offender J was known to the multi-agency messenger team, particularly his wife's report in 2011 that he had admitted raping a 12-year-old. This followed his attempted murder of her in 2009. Was offender J resident in Oldham at the time of his conviction, and were there any children living at his address? If so, what attempts were made to safeguard them following these disclosures? If he has been released from prison, is he allowed any unsupervised contact with under 16s? Councillor Chance.
Thank you. Initially, I want to repeat my apologies to Sam. It was clear she was let down both by the council and by Greater Manchester Police. But I can also appreciate if she feels that it's too little too late, and I understand that. While the review is clear, there was no wider cover-up in terms of CSE.
Bullshit.
The complexity of
Bullshit. That's bullshit.
There were obviously significant failings in Sam's case when she was approached to us as an adult to seek answers about the abuse she faced, and failings in how we supported her. We did not respond appropriately and with the honesty and transparency that we should have and that was expected of us. I've asked for a review of Sam's contact with the council as an adult to make sure that this doesn't happen to anybody else and that we can learn from this, because this is not acceptable. I am not here to defend the defensible. In terms of any legal action against the council, our advice would be to seek independent legal advice and support. But we would wish to
Are they going to pay for it?
To know in touch with support organisations that can offer advice and support and how to go about that. On the issue of criminal investigations into council staff, the police are now investigating a number of cases, including yours, and we will fully cooperate with those investigations. The police will determine through these investigations should there be any action taken against individuals. In terms of the contact between Sam and the council about the review and her involvement in that, I will shortly pass that on to Gerard Jones, who worked alongside the review team throughout, and he can give a more detailed answer. What I can say is that if Sam feels we could and should have done more, then we should acknowledge that and we should apologise, because we're not here to reinforce her trauma with regards to that. Before I do pass over to Gerard, I just want to answer the final point about one of the offenders referenced in the report. For legal reasons, we can't share specific details relating to this individual. However, please be assured that we will be supporting the police in their investigations into the crimes committed against you and seeking convictions for those who committed them. And then, Gerard, if you want to pick up on...
Don't apologise, prosecute.
Thanks, Councillor Chadson. First thing to say is just to give us assurance about the independence of the review. The review was conducted independently, as was already been said, and those who read it under the auspices of Greater Manchester Combined Authority. There were, the Council submitted over 3,000 documents, including emails, reports, any information that was asked for. We made a commitment at the beginning of the review that we would give full and frank disclosure. We brought all of the cases forward ourselves. They brought them, we suggested Sophie's case be brought forward.
They didn't. They did everything within the, can I have another coffee? Do you want another coffee? Two sugars latte.
Sophie at the beginning of the review via her social worker, and later on I did make the decision not to reapproach her based on those working closely with her. Advocates working with Sophie did a better review
Please let him finish, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Advocates working with Sophie did approach the review team at the point she was given a copy of part of the review, and at that point she was happy to be involved in it. And just to reiterate something that Amanda said, of course we want to learn that. Of course we felt we let Sam down, and of course we're very, very sorry about it.
Natalie, Alfie, D, Ali. Sam says thank you. Thank you.
As Councillor Chadden says, she's asked for a review of those arrangements, and that will be done in due course. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor, the next question has been submitted for the Leader of the Council by Deborah Barrett, who wants to ask her own question. So, if Deborah Barrett
can you record that down?
My question is to Amanda Chatterton and every council member and official. For 3 years, the council stated that child sexual exploitation was Berthier's lies and there was no grooming happening in Oldham. At the last full council meeting, the then leader, Ruth Shah, not only apologised for the grooming of the children of Oldham, but also confirmed that it was still happening. After I'd asked a question that was reported on Sky News and newspapers. Back on the 6th of November 2019, every council member from all parties bar one,
Thank you.
Brian Orbin, walked out of these chambers rather than allow one question. Even calling the police, wasting police time. It's now been confirmed that not only has Greater Manchester Police and Oldham Council covered up the grooming of the children of Oldham, but it looks like you're committing misconduct in a public office. Can the council leader please tell every resident in Oldham who will be held accountable for this travesty happening in our town, and explain why anyone should believe anything you say anymore from this council? Calling the government, have a full public criminal investigation for the children of our town.
here to speak for previous leaders. I've been leader of this council for 2 months.
You were still here though, Amanda. And you still walked out, Amanda.
The words that you used and were quoted were not my words, and I'm not here to justify or defend other things that people have said, and that's not for me to do. We've never shied away from the fact that these extremely evil men out there who commit these horrendous crimes, and as I stated in the statement,
I'm shaking, I'm fucking fuming now.
here and elsewhere in the country.
Thanks.
The report makes it clear that we were aware of the issue, we were working to tackle it, and we were working to promote the risk of CSE to the public. The report doesn't allege any misconduct in public office by council staff. However, we will of course work with Greater Manchester Police who are re-looking at these crimes again. Should any misconduct be covered during that process, we will of course take action against anybody found to commit misconduct. Now, obviously you make about why should you believe the councillor anything we say. The 2 people that carried out this report were independent experts. Employed by this government to intervene in councils such as they were in Rotherham, where they were appointed to take over that council.
Amanda, Gary Ridgway is a Labour member.
Appointed by Andy Burnham.
Many have said the findings of the report. There was no cover-up. And you also asked if I'll call in the government. We've already had an independent review. It took 2.5 years of painstaking work by the same independent experts that the government are selling elsewhere. We asked for an independent review by national experts, and we've got one.
We want a proper one.
Other agencies, and Andy Burnham will confirm this in a moment.
I'll have a cigarette in a minute.
Other agencies are aware of this review, and as I understand it, the Home Secretary and the Home Office have been made aware of this, and the copy of this was sent to us. Also, I do know that on Thursday evening, this review is due to be debated in Parliament. We are not hiding that this review has happened.
This review's been debated in Parliament.
And if the government wants to do anything, then that is up to them, but we will not be calling for another review into the council.
So I can confirm that I've kept the government and the Home Office informed at every stage of this review. And also I can confirm that this review was submitted to the Home Secretary prior to publication. I have been in contact with the Home Secretary since we initiated this review back in 2017, and we've worked closely with the Home Office and provided everything.
Well, tell them to come here and explain it to you, because we don't believe a word you say.
Something about how this review came about in the
Sorry,
first place.
I'm getting wound up.
Some reassurance as to why it was commissioned. Back in 2017, early May, the BBC broadcast the Betrayed Girls programme, and it was shortly after the mayoral election at that time. Within a few days of taking office, I commissioned an overarching review into exploitation in Greater Manchester, following an interview that I heard with Maggie Oliver on the BBC, where she said, comments made on independence, where Maggie Oliver said that she had been part of an investigation that had been closed down overnight.
Yeah.
I was not prepared to leave an allegation hanging that the wrong
Sean
motives
Newton,
drive
I think that's something we're going to have to do.
on this most important of issues. And I would refer the Council to the comments that Maggie Oliver has made since the publication of this review, when she states she has confidence in the individual.
That's barefaced lies, Andy Burnham. She said it's a cover-up. That's barefaced lies, Andy Burnham. She said it was a cover-up. Do you want me to phone her and get her on the phone?
Ladies and gentlemen, can I just ask you, please, now listen, serious questions are being asked, and you're getting the answers that you submitted. People can't hear what's being said. I just ask you to stop shouting.
Madam Mayor, the next group of questions, and there's 1, 2, 3, 5 of them, the next group of questions are in relation to Sophie. If any of these people would like to ask their own question, please make themselves known to me. The questions I'm going to be asking next are from Stephen Pilkington, Caroline Watt, David Mowbray, Tony Martin and Kay Smith. I understand that they all are happy for me to read out their questions. So beginning with Steve Pilkington's question, they are questions to the Leader of the Council and the Director of Children's Services. Question from Stephen Pilkington. In several media appearances, victims champion Maggie Oliver has alleged that Oldham Council lied to the team conducting the CSE review by saying that the victim, known to as Sophie, did not wish to be interviewed by the review team. I know that this is not a finding of the review, and the report does not make any reference to the review team feeling that they were misled by Oldham Council. Is there any evidence to support Maggie Oliver's allegation? If so, what will be the consequences for those found to have lied? If not, will Oldham Council be requesting that Maggie Oliver publicly correct the record? The next question is from Caroline Watt. Can you explain the difference to what changed Sophie's mind? It clearly states Sophie wasn't ready and was suicidal by a social worker. Then why did Maggie Oliver push for her to be in the review? What changed? The council repeatedly claimed they had informed Sophie of the review, but Sophie said she didn't hear anything back. Did the council send Sophie the information because Sophie said she never received it? What is the truth? A quick reminder, all the questions that are similar we're going to ask together individually and then there'll be a response. So the next question from David Mowbray. Can I get a full explanation why Oldham Council told the people who were conducting the investigation that Sophie did not want to talk to them, as this clearly was not the case, as has been explained since the report came out by Sophie herself and also by Maggie Oliver, who has been helping Sophie for 3 years. I believe this was the cause of the delay in the report being published. Tony Martin's question. Chapter 8 of part 2 of the review refers to the case of Sophie. In 8.4, 8.5 and 8.6, the reviewers claim to have been advised by Oldham Council not to interview Sophie due to serious concerns for Sophie's welfare and that Sophie was unwilling to be interviewed. The review was promised to be published on 24th of January 2022. However, immediately prior to this date, it was stated that there would be a further delay to enable new information to be processed and further witnesses to be interviewed.
After Sophie leaked it, that's when they said we'll speak to her.
Maggie Oliver, in an interview on Talk TV, vociferously claimed that there was a clear attempt to cover up Sophie's story.
There was.
Sophie approached her early in 2022, stating that she had still not been approached for interview. Ms Oliver then went on to the review team and was told of the council's advice.
No, you're not the only one seething, I'm shaking.
Ms Oliver is insistent that it was only due to her intervention that Sophie was eventually interviewed.
Correct.
Ms Oliver's intervention clearly led to the aforementioned deferment of the review's publication. The review reported this as she, Sophie, made representations in January 22 that she had not been approached for interview by the review team. No mention of Ms Oliver. I asked who were the council officials who advised the review team not to interview Sophie. Has disciplinary action been taken against them? And the last question in this section is from Kay Smith. Maggie Oliver has confirmed that Oldham Council has been involved in lying to Malcolm Newsom and Gary Ridgway in attempting to prevent Sophie from testifying.
100% right, Maggie Oliver.
I doubt that Amanda Chatterton or any of her team is going to stand up and claim Maggie Oliver is a liar and that Oldham Council did not make attempts to prevent Sophie from testifying. Will Amanda Chatterton now unreservedly apologise to the entire town, following officers of Oldham Council falsely claimed that Sophie did not want to testify and would likely commit suicide if the review team contacted her directly? An examination of Oldham Council paper trail clearly shows that the council established a team to communicate information to the review team. It was clearly this team that lied. Is Amanda Chatterton prepared to name every council officer and elected member on this group, confirm they have been dismissed, or is she going to pretend what they did does not amount to gross misconduct? Finally, now that we know that Oldham Council has tampered with evidence and lied throughout the review, will Shahid Mushtaq, who has been the lead member for Children's Services, resign with immediate effect for lies, deceit and cover-up instigated by those he is responsible for.
Yes, absolutely.
I believe the council to respond and then the Director of Children's Services.
Before you respond, Amanda, I've got evidence from July 21 that Sam has been contacting Gary Newsom and Malcolm Newey. I've got evidence of it. Evidence, Andy. Do you remember when I went to give you that evidence, Andy, in Ashton? You refused to take it then, didn't you?
Okay, so the report lays out the contact that the council had with Sophie throughout the review period, and I'll obviously ask Gerard to pick that up and see who worked with the review team to provide more information on this. However, as I said previously, if Sophie feels that we should have done more to facilitate her involvement, then we have to apologise for that. Again,
apologies not enough, Amanda.
Then of course they will be dealt with and that will be
sacked.
Elsewhere in this, before I hand over to Gerard, there's a reference in relation to Councillor Mushtaq having held the Children's Social Care portfolio. I can confirm that Councillor Mushtaq has never held this portfolio.
Wow.
Hand over to Gerard.
Thanks, Amanda. Just to, without repeating what I've said already, but I will say some of that, is that we did ask for Sophie's case to be included. We're really pleased, actually, that eventually she was able to participate in the review.
You did everything you possibly could to stop her from doing it.
In relation to that, we have two duties in relation to Samantha. One is a duty of confidentiality.
Have a look at these faces here.
Second is a duty of care.
Bullshit liars.
It was those two duties that informed our decision making in relation to that. And that decision was based on the advice of the professionals working with her.
Name the professionals then.
However, I have noted the comments of Maggie Oliver, and I have written to Maggie Oliver to reassure her about the decisions that were made. And then finally, I would like to say, in terms of the group that was working with the review team, no elected members were on that group. The guy in the Executive Director of Reform and latterly the Assistant Chief Executive are the members of that group representing the Council. A number of other staff members have supported or advised the review throughout the time period. Many from Children's Social Care, but also staff from other services.
I'm sorry for shouting, guys, but I'm just... Yeah, Maggie should be here. She can't. She's got other things on.
We are
Joe.
sorry about what happened to Sam. We are pleased that she was able to make a contribution, and we will learn and improve things.
We will learn. We will learn. Yeah, I'm going to show you every one of these bare-faced liars. I'm going to go around the front and show you.
Public submitted questions. We're going to go on to their questions. We've got questions from Miss Harrison, Alison Campbell, and Maggie Hurley. Those three questions.
Every one of them there on that panel, they're all bare-faced liars. Every one of them. I have got evidence that Sam contacted Maggie Oliver and Gary Newsom and Malcolm Ridgway, or whatever they're called, knobheads and knobheads.
Following the release of the CSE report, Councillor Amanda Champson's statement.
I'm just going to stay here a minute. I just need to see. People need to see the faces of these people. I know it is.
Uber taxi drivers shall obtain a licence.
I will in a minute, Emma. I will in a minute. I will in a minute, Emma.
Do the surrounding boroughs follow the same due diligence regarding their licensing as Oldham does? How can we,
That's Harry Cattle that's speaking.
be confident that Uber taxi drivers do not pose a risk to the children of this borough? The next question is from Alison Campbell. I have noticed recently a lot of private hire drivers operating
All right, Montez.
the licences issued
You should to go and sit back down in the seat.
I will do. One sec. One sec.
No, you've been asked by this lady.
Yeah, no, one sec.
If you don't do it now, we'll get the police up to remove you.
Will you?
Yeah.
Oh, police again.
My question is,
Don't want to bring the police in, guys.
to get around the recently introduced 6-month CRB checks of the
Please go and sit down.
I'm going to go in a minute. The more you bet me, the more I'll stay here. So just hang on.
only private hire taxi drivers who have passed the recent
Every one of them. They're threatening with police now because I want to show you all these bare-faced liars. Every one of them. Remember these faces. Don't be following me. Right, we'll carry on.
Oh, okay. Sorry, thank you. Yeah, indeed. Maggie Hill, the answer wrong.
Billy? Yeah. Put your mic on, push the button.
The Assurance Review confirmed that Oldham Council's Licensing Committee on multiple occasions issued taxi licences to known sex offenders, including those that had abused our children. Will Amanda Chatterton, the leader of Oldham Council, please confirm that the findings presented regarding failings in her council's licensing committee are accurate? Can she further confirm the dates of each of these meetings where these licences were awarded? Confirm the names of the councillors at each of these meetings where Oldham councillors decided to award licences to known child sex offenders. The council has this information. There is no wiggle room here. Amanda Chatterton has access to the names of each and every one of these councillors.
Yes, she does.
We, the people of Oldham, also have a right to those names. Who are those councillors that through their actions protected paedophiles? Name them. And those councillors that served on those licensing committees that are still sat here today. Do you have the courage to stand up now and resign with immediate effect?
They should do.
Or are you going to continue to lie and hide behind everyone else, like the paedophile in naval protectors you are? Will any of you take responsibility for your actions?
Yeah.
Even older, we have time restrictions on who can get a licence to drive taxis. In fact, we have some of the most stringent conditions in Greater Manchester. Authorities that request a DBS every 6 months. Nobody who is convicted of sexual offence is granted a taxi licence. Checks are also conducted taxi van sending officers to ensure we're keeping people safe to the best of our abilities.
She was telling me to go back to my seat. Him over there threatened with the police if I didn't come back to my seat.
Again in 2021.
Disgusting.
I've also asked for another one this year to take place to satisfy myself as a new leader. This was intended to make sure our licensing arrangements were in keeping with new national guidelines. Members of those panels acted on the advice of professionals and on the information they had at the time in making their decisions to move
She's not answering the question. She's not actually answering the question.
Answer the question.
Answer the question.
She's not answering the question.
Oh, Mrs. Jogan.
It's a licensing meetings and the members of the licensing panel at that point are matter of public record and are available
Charlotte
on the
Green,
website.
Oldham Signs,
Additionally,
Labour.
guidance means that criminal
Yeah.
criminality checks are undertaken on taxi drivers every 6 months.
All right,
And this
then.
applies to every licensing
All right,
office
then.
in England and Wales. However, we know some drivers who choose to get licences from other local authority areas like Wolverhampton or Basildale. If, for instance, the fee charge is lower, some policies such as vehicle age are more relaxed than here in Oldham. This can apply to taxis working from any company, including...
Bernie Wood, they do forget who they work for, and they've forgotten our children. They've forgotten the children of Oldham.
licensing conditions, and I do know that our lead for licensing in Oldham has written to the government regarding to this. In Greater Manchester, we are already working to have a single separate district in the situation. We do what we can locally by working with all operators in the borough, currently using drivers.
And this is what happens when you submit a question beforehand, so they can come up with bullshit answers and actually not answer the actual question that was asked.
By the ability of taxis licensed anywhere to work anywhere, and that became a reality when a deregulation bill, I think by the coalition government, gave any taxi licensed anywhere.
Fucking Andy Burnham, he talks a load of shit.
The guidance is what is in place nationally, and as Amanda says, it's only guidance. It's not.
Vote Andy out. Vote Andy out. I say. Shame on all of them, yeah.
Minimum licensing standards across our 10 authorities, which include a range of provisions, one being that there is a 6-monthly criminal record check, and Oldham are one of the first councils to implement it, but all 10 will implement that provision. We want to get to a point where only taxis licensed here are able to work here, so that we can control the standards applied as a city region.
Did you hear about Amanda Shadderton's new job this week at the GMCA? Did you hear? That's her reward.
And the questions have been submitted by Jackie Schofield and Charlotte Every-Rose. If either of those individuals are here and would like to ask their own questions, please let us know. Otherwise, I'm happy to ask the questions on their behalf. So, the first question, Madam Mayor...
Have you noticed these councillors are getting louder and louder and louder, and this is where we have to shout?
My question is in relation to offender A, Shabir Ahmad in brackets. A young woman came forward in 2012 claiming she had been abused by offender A when he was employed as a welfare rights officer by the council.
Wow.
I would like to know why the Children's Social Care Service closed the case within a few days without undertaking any assessment, which might have resulted in a proper investigation into offender A's employment conduct. Also, why weren't any assessments taken when earlier opportunities were presented, as well with regard to the council being informed of serious allegations against offender A? If allowed, another question, I would like also to ask if there will be an investigation into the social care of Sophie, in particular with regard to their lax attitude when it concerned Sophie's involvement with older men. The next question is from Charlotte Every-Rose, and again to the Leader of the Council. Despite attempts to deceive the people of Oldham, it has now been forced out that Shabir Ahmed was employed by Oldham Council for 18 years.
Do you remember when it were all birthday slides? Oh, you weren't here then, were you?
It has now also been confirmed that as well as having access to vulnerable children and families, the ringleader of the Rochdale grooming gang was also protected from investigation whilst employed by the council. Is Amanda Chatterton, the leader of Oldham Council, prepared to name the Labour Party colleagues
Yeah, do it.
that knew Shabir Ahmed and therefore would have known...
Yes! Good question!
The council chief executive and leader of the council at the time, a complaint of abuse against Shabir Ahmed was inexplicably shut down by the council. The people of Oldham have a right to know who exactly was responsible. Reassure us all that the council, either directly via the Mayor's office or any other OMBC-linked entity, did not provide Shabir Ahmed with any form of reference or support of any kind once he had been charged.
Who gave him a reference?
Council, to be honest with us all, Shabir Ahmed was one of yours and you protected
Councillor, give Shabir Hamid a reference.
Stand up, show your face. Go on, show your face. Stand up.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Stand up.
ladies and gentlemen, Charlotte and Jackie are submitted 2 questions. Please let them hear the answer.
Councillor Jabbar, who gave Shabir Hamid a reference?
He's down here, Jabbar. He sat down here. He's gone down in his seat.
Misinformation on this issue. There's no information that the council knew that when the mayor had committed any crime to the point that he was employed by Oldham Council.
Ask Councillor Jabbar, he knows.
Until 2 years after he had left the council.
What are you saying?
Protected from investigation by the council.
We already know the answer, mate. We already know the answer, that's why. This is rubbish what she's saying.
Asked me to name those who knew Shabir Hamid. And the answer is that I don't have a list that know that.
Ask him! Ask him! Ask Councillor Jabbar who gave him a reference.
I don't have any reference issues on his behalf, and we have got no record of one within the council. It's only naming officers in charge at a time. That is also a matter of public record and available online. As to whether we could have prevented further offending for this individual, the reality
It's on public record. Are you having a laugh? 4 years ago it was birthday lies. You wouldn't even answer the question. You don't know how this has affected me, so please. Right. You need to just back. Right, well, you need to back off.
child sexual exploitation and didn't know the best way to protect or support vulnerable young people. We also let Sophie down as an adult when she came to us looking for answers about the abuse.
We've heard this, Amanda. You just said it. You just repeated it.
She's just reading the same rubbish. They're reading the. She's saying the same rubbish. She's saying the same rubbish. Yeah.
Okay, that's. If you'd like to listen, these are questions from members of the public who might be in the room. The next question,
That is Rajamir over there, that's standing up, telling us to be calm. Councillor Jabbar is kindly trying to look at his paperwork and ignore everything.
Answer the question!
Okay, the next 20 more questions from members of the public. 20 more questions that we want to get through.
Councillor Jabbar, stand up and deny it! I dare you!
The next question from Ellen Bishop. How are we going to instigate change in an environment where so little value is placed in both seeking and actively listening to the experiences of young people? Where behaviours are viewed through the lens of being problematic rather than symptomatic? Are there opportunities to disclose their experiences being drastically reduced?
Moab is over there. And he's telling them, he knows, they know.
Having listened to the experiences of young people in this borough for nearly 25 years as a youth worker, this is a commonly
It's absolutely atrocious and an absolute travesty what is happening in this council chambers tonight. This is actually history in the making, because you are now all watching barefaced liars. Bullshit lies. It's all bullshit lies.
Determine that we listen to the next generation and ensure that collectively we build the Oldham that they want to live with and be educated in now and in the future. I'll hand over to Chris Bowen for a GMP response.
In GMP, all of our officers are now trained to better understand and recognise when a child's behaviour could be the product of abuse.
Blah, blah, blah.
We have specialist officers who are trained to take appropriate action to protect vulnerable children at risk.
Madam Mayor, the next set of questions will be submitted from Neil Wilby.
Ray!
And the Chief Superintendent Bowen.
It's not an Oldham
Has the
resident.
council leader or any of the executive management team challenged the quality and content of the
You're right,
CSE
Billy.
insurance review? Do they agree with me that it can be most charitable
You what, sweetheart?
as a suboptimal and does not
Can I just introduce you to Billy?
even close
Announce who you are, Billy. You're live on Oldham Together.
Billy from PAG UK, supporting the people of Oldham against another council covering up another grooming scandal. I'm here to support them today.
You're very welcome, Billy.
Thank you. It's an honour to stand with you, Dad.
£1,000 and £1 million. And if the answer is no, will the leader be encouraging the mayor to claw back at least part of the sums paid over to the review team and invite Mr Burnham to withdraw any further contracts with them? Has the council leader or monitoring officer referred to the police any elected council member or paid council officer over any suspected criminal offences disclosed by the review? If the answer is yes, how many?
And you can stick your CAS tax up where the sun don't shine, Mr Burnham, according to the Oldham people.
I'm Rochdale. Back on that.
I'm Rochdale as well. He wants to bring in your CAS tax. Here he is. That's the guy there. There. That's Andy Burnham there. He's the one that wants to charge you for you getting in your car.
You sound like Sykes, right? That's Cyril Smith's best pal.
Yeah, we know he's Cyril Smith's best pal. Yeah, we know that. If you come this way, you're all right.
Thank you, Amanda. So, as I said, this overarching review was commissioned in 2017, initially focused on Manchester and Rochdale. And in 2019, when a request was received from this council to commission a review into Oldham, in 2019, when a request was received from this council to expand the review, I agreed to that.
Melissa! Melissa! Hi, Melissa! Hi, Melissa! Hiya! We love you, Melissa.
Is for around £460,000, so it is not the figure that was quoted in the question, and that covers the Manchester review that was completed.
We love you, Melissa.
Review that is ongoing, and this review.
Rochdale review that's ongoing.
Ongoing, yeah.
Oh, interesting. It was buried in part one.
That in Manchester, following the publication of the report into Operation Augusta, there have been 23 arrests. In Oldham, we have seen Greater Manchester Police launch Operation Listen.
How many arrests? How many arrests?
I should say.
No arrests.
How many arrests?
In Rochdale, Operation Lytton, there have been 8 people charged and will face trial next year. I believe taking criminals off our streets.
Hi, Emily. We love you too, Emily.
Hi, Emily.
God bless you.
God bless you, Gary.
God bless you. Right? Just God bless you. I'm nearly all of you, son.
He'd be in tears in a minute, the lads. He'd be in tears in a minute.
Horrible. Horrible.
We love you, Emily.
Madam Mayor, the next question is from Mr. John Lawrence. If he's available, he's invited to ask his own question, or I'll do it fine.
He's not here.
Okay. Madam Mayor, the question is, will we see criminal convictions brought against those in the council who let all this happen? And if it involves the police, will we see convictions there as well? If not, why? Also, I would like everybody involved in abusing our kids named publicly by you. And that's a question to the Leader of the Council, Councillor Chelsea.
Here we go. She'll be saying, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry.
It's going to be a broken record, the same.
It is a broken record.
Again and again and again.
Onto Chris Bowen, as the rules about naming alleged perpetrators and those convicted are a matter for the police reports.
That calling them militia has that many corners.
Will be investigated regardless of the passage of time, and should any potential misconduct be identified, this will be thoroughly investigated by a professional standards branch through the appropriate procedures.
Everything's online. It's live now, and it'll be on Oldham Together forever.
If Deborah's in the room and would like to ask, or I'll ask it for her. How many people, Deborah Hodgin, how many people have already been prosecuted for these crimes? The young girls named the people responsible. Have they all been arrested and charged? If not, why not?
Not one.
Response from the police.
Not one.
Following the publication of the report, GMP has launched Operation Sherwood. The operation named for supporting CSE victims in Oldham.
No, you're all right, Billy. I'm with you, kid.
106 officers pursuing offenders and seeking justice for those who should have had the support all those years ago. Our investigation continues.
You had the names before the report came out.
Madam Mayor, the next question has been anonymised to potential victim. I would like to ask if I had come forward in 1981.
If I had come forward.
I was taken off the streets of Oldham Town Centre by 3 Asian men, and there was a man who worked in the Civic Centre in social services who was preying on young teenage girls in care. Would things have been different?
No.
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 Labour Monster Grooming Party.
Okay, thank you. And I'm really sorry to hear the story that the woman has sent in.
Another sorry.
I obviously can't answer things like how things would have been handled at the time, but I can absolutely promise that things are completely different now.
They're not! They're not!
The way we were
Oh,
now is completely different to the 1980s and the 1990s, the time this review relates to, and even to last year. That's because we're always learning and looking for ways to improve further. Based on best practice from around the country, from reviews from local authorities, which are known as...
This has been going on since the 70s, Joe.
...see how we're doing, and for formal inspections, such as formal bodies, such as Ofsted. We understand more about child abuse, about child exploitation, about how to deal with it.
Still making the same mistakes.
We can't be complacent, we can't and will improve further.
What have you learnt about grooming gangs?
She's not going to come to you, like, is she?
Go to Maggie Oliver if you need any help at all. Go to Maggie Oliver.
Helen Bishop,
Again.
people are entitled to ask more than one question, but they are listed in the order that they were received. So the next question, Helen Bishop, can the council agree to ensure that all staff working with children and young people receive appropriate training, specifically in understanding how to identify and respond to concerns that a colleague may be either abusing their professional position or neglecting their safeguarding responsibilities. That's for the leader and for...
90% of the Labour Party are guilty of malfeasance.
For a question. However, I'm going to refer this over to Gemma so you can give a more fuller answer than I.
Thank you, Leader.
She just said sorry.
I'm happy to confirm that all staff
What am I doing? What am I doing?
children and young people undertake child protection training on a regular basis. And also they receive professional supervision from their manager.
That's me he's on about.
Also has a whistleblowing policy.
Calls me bloody dogging Debbie. He's a little shit. I'm going to get him after.
I was over there and I seen him stretching at you, so I come round to fuck him off.
Yeah.
Furthermore, staff working directly with children and young people are subject to an enhanced police check to ensure they do not pose a risk to children.
She's there to ask a question.
These checks and balances are vital to our safeguarding procedures, so please be assured that they are strictly followed. Thank you.
Stay where you are. Stay where you are and ask your question. Stay where you are and ask your question. She wanted to ask a question.
Come back to it if appropriate, yeah?
Yeah, she wants to ask a question.
She's a survivor.
Yeah, it's not easy for her, this.
This is not easy for her at all.
Come on.
Go on, girl. This is a survivor, everybody.
We're with you.
Hello. In 1981, I was taken into care of Oldham Council, the local authority. When I went into the girls' home, I was warned about the man that worked in Civic Centre. I was horrified. I was also taken off the streets of Oldham Town Centre. I was 16 years old. I was so disgusted with myself. I was taken out of the area. I was taken along the M62 to other towns, other northern towns, because that's what happens. The only way I could get back the next day, if I promised them, and I had to promise, that I would meet them the next day so they could do the same to me again. I promised. I just wanted to get back to Oldham. And then, the next day, I didn't leave the girls' home, but I could see them driving up and down the street looking for me. It was absolutely horrendous. Now, in 1989, I turned to social services again to help me with my sons. He was 4 years old, and one day when he came home to me, you gave me back a sexually abused child.
Oh my God.
Now, there was police charges brought against the foster home people that I'm not going to name names because it's not right. Now, that was in 1981 and 89. We're now in 2022. I think it's about time you held your heads in shame. Realise what's going on.
God bless her. Billy, go and help her. Billy, go and speak to her.
Bunch of scumbag!
Absolute disgrace! And he got no heart!
And he was judged!
He got no heart!
Where is she, Billy? Right. She's gone in the other room. She don't want to talk to them.
Tell the truth. It's not
Will she talk? Will you go and ask if she'll talk to Sophie? Go and speak to her.
Why don't you know?
Coming here tonight to speak to us about that, obviously deeply traumatic events, and it's absolutely horrifying that what that woman went through. I think she's
I'll tell you where she's gone. Another victim's gone to support her.
It's a very moving and sad story we've just heard. Can I just
I'm sorry if this is cutting off. I don't mean for it to cut off.
my colleague, Chris Byrne and myself will follow up with that person to see if we can provide support, and also whether there is a possibility of bringing offenders to justice who have committed crimes against them. That's who we need to put first.
Oh, they're all rushing now. Now another victim's gone to support her. To Greater Manchester Police, what about Ellie Williams that was trafficked into Oldham? What are you going to do about poor Ellie Williams who was trafficked into Oldham?
She's not the only one.
The next question is towards the police. Madam Mayor, the next question is from Neil Wilby, because Chief Superintendent Bullen considered that the remedy...
I know people don't like Neil Wilby, but one thing for sure, he has helped people. Aye.
Either to that survivor of child abuse, of child sexual abuse, or the wider public of both the borough and region. Will the Chief Superintendent agree with me that the only two appropriate ways of dealing with the manifest failings of his fellow officers, past and present, is for firstly an outside police force to robustly investigate, without fear or favour, all those responsible for Sophie's horrific ordeal and prosecute those responsible. If and where the evidence supports such action, and secondly, for the Chief Constable, the Mayor and Oldham Council leader to allocate the necessary funding for Sophie to instruct a specialist lawyer to pursue a human rights and personal injury claim against the force of the Council.
If the Council don't pay for it, we're getting a GoFundMe. She will have the support and take you lot to town.
Alcohol.
Exploitation in Greater Manchester and the support available to victims is thankfully now worlds apart from where we were in the early 2000s.
Bullshit!
We've already learnt from the past. You're talking rubbish, man.
All of our officers are trained to understand and recognise when a child's behaviour could be the product of abuse, and we have specialist officers who are trained to take prompt action to help vulnerable children at risk.
Are you alright? No, she wanted to get out the door. I know they've all just rushed in on her, aren't they?
I said to you, you need to safeguard her, make sure she's okay. He's like, well, she's just I don't personally, I don't.
Well, there you go. It's there in the making. There's a woman that's just been and confessed everything that's just happened, and the guy's just let her go. He's not safeguarded her.
I'm pleased to say that the team has so far seen results in a number of major investigations in Rochdale, with charges being brought and preparing for trial of Operation.
What about the people that's been trafficked into Oldham?
Defendants were charged in March 2000.
You're making it sound like you did good work in Rochdale. You didn't.
Offences in which a trial is set for May 2023. Operation Cream Jacket, for some of you will be aware.
Them three girls, Andy Burnham, I know personally, and they've told me they've been failed.
So far, so my message to any offenders of these heinous crimes is we're not letting this go. We will reinvestigate.
Bullshit, you muckle.
In addition to this, a further uplift of the team is being agreed to specifically focus on Operation Sherwood. The operation aims for supporting any CSE victims in Oldham.
You lot ain't no bleeding Robin Hoods, that's for sure. Operation Sherwood, my arse.
Met the ex-operation in 10 years. They're a fucking joke, a lot of them.
I'm sick of them. I'm sick of them.
Dirty, stinky.
I've just told them we're getting a GoFundMe page for your solicitors. I've just told these lot that we're getting a GoFundMe page for any, yeah, for all the victims. And we're taking these lot to town. Do you know what? Listening to this shower of rubbish, right? I think I'd rather have stayed at home and watch Coronation Street. No, I'm joking.
There's another question from Helen Bishop.
Helen Bishop, how many questions does she want to put in?
Are the council going to tackle the unhelpful culture of sending and reinforcing the toxic message to young people that what young women wear directly impacts upon the standard of behaviour that they can expect from others towards them? As is still evident in our education system.
In other words, they're trying to blame the girls for what they're wearing.
It's the girls' fault for wearing their skirts.
That's what they're trying to say.
The constant and overbearing scrutiny of their clothing, over and above that of young men.
Yeah, you're right, Bernie Wood.
Subject to across the world, that has been the case sadly for as long as I can remember. We already work with schools across the board to promote safety for young women and young men.
See, she's reading from a script, people. Can you see? I can't zoom in because I don't know how to do zooming in. I've tried to do a zoom in, and oh, there you go. Sorry, I apologise. I can zoom in. That is Charlotte Green, by the way. No, I'm glad I didn't stay home alone at all.
The leader of the council, by way of a post on a council Facebook page, breached an embargo concerning the release date of the CSE review report. On Sunday the 19th of June, I reported the existence of that Facebook post in an article on the New World Media website. A serious breach of a matter of considerable public interest, and in doing so, deliberately breached restrictions placed on journalists relating to the same embargo.
What?
The result was that my invitation to the press conference
Why are they in there?
but Councillor Challenger was allowed to attend.
Why are they not in here?
I alarmed her as to who should attend that press
No.
conference or not.
No.
Mr. Newsom considered that those
It's not their fault. They're here to support the victims. They should be allowed in.
reasonable to all parties, and given this is a direct leader, I'm pleased to respond.
So this is one for clarity, to be honest, around the reference to me breaching embargo and the details of the court launch. And I wanted to address it to say that I was not under any embargo.
Yeah.
I'm leader of the council, and when I was
Cass.
the launch was
Pass it along for
I
Cass.
took the decision to share this information with the people of OLDHAM, to call for this meeting in order to discuss the findings. I was not then privy to any discussions or decisions about the press conference and who would be in attendance, as this was a combined authority event.
So, yeah, they would. Susie, they would. Hmm? Hmm?
Microphone!
Put your microphone on!
Apologies, folks. Apologies, I'll read it again. The next few questions are from Helen Bishop. I don't know if she's in the room. How are we going to go about achieving better targeted social education, training and information to young people in the borough to help safeguard them against adults who seek to exploit their vulnerability and lack of life experience? Question to the leader.
That's not her off Ramsey Street.
Who? I think it could be her off Ramsey Street, yeah. Yeah, it could be, yeah. Yeah. Who? I don't know who he is. He's a council official. Don't know who he is. I'll ask him if he comes back. If he's got the balls to come back.
Just to give some examples, I suppose, of the work we do, substantially different than we've happened in the past. We have much more engagement. We just have recently had a complex safeguarding meeting with all the comments
Lucia.
and with other professionals in Oldham, where we've been talking to them and working with them. They're doing briefings around coercive and controlling behaviour.
Who was that man that was stood there?
With schools on healthy
with the glasses?
we are supporting schools to undertake
Neil.
harmful sexual behaviours audit and to
What does he do?
raise the profile of sexual exploitation in the schools.
Okay.
They have, our college has been very active, both in Oldham College and Oldham Sixth Form College, in safeguarding training for young people and for staff. We're doing level 3 trauma training for the safeguarding and welfare team, and that for Safer Streets, our performing arts students have been doing work out there to raise the profile of gender-based violence. So there are lots of really great examples.
Becky messaged me, but I've not been able to read it because.
Raise the profile and awareness of exploitation and to improve their safety from it. Thank you, Lee.
Right. She needs to come in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Discussing and developing an effective strategy to tackle the exploitation of boys and young men in the borough. Too many of whom are groomed from an early age to become involved in trafficking
Emily!
and drugs.
Hi, Emily.
Exposed to violence, trauma, and sexual
We love you, Emily.
Hi, Emily.
When's the Rochdale review, Emily? I don't know. It started, hasn't it? They're starting it now, aren't they? Another review. They're doing a review in Rochdale now.
It's a really important point about all young people, not girls, boys, and young adults too, and adults with vulnerabilities are at risk of exploitation. We know so much more about that than we did before. One of the things we're really proud of is a project that we've launched around Failsworth called the RIP Project, where we're putting...
Do you remember the Failsworth school and the teacher that ended up marrying his pupil? Do you remember that? Oh yeah, that happened.
So that's just one example of the work we're doing.
When's the Rochdale review, Billy?
I didn't even know there was one.
Oh yeah, there is one, yeah.
Area for us to focus on as part of our whole safeguarding system for all vulnerable people, adults, children and young people, you know, and we're determined to keep that good work going.
You're welcome, Emily.
In Greater Manchester, we have a programme called Challenger, the largest ever multi-agency response to tackling organised crime.
You keep going on about this Phoenix.
Phoenix? What Phoenix?
That's the name of the model they're using, but Phoenix is 20-year-old.
20-year-old, right.
Any aspect of criminals' life, aiming to systematically dismantle the gangs, making it difficult for them to operate. This involves GMP, local authorities, trade standards...
Why don't you go to the 24/7 hotel? You'll find them all there, mate.
Told them about that 5-6 years ago, no.
HMRC and other partners, including non-government organisations, aim is to identify every single organised crime in Manchester and to use all means...
Yeah, that's who it is. I know, Ellen Bishop, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Where's the space?
Who specifically target vulnerable young people to deal their drugs and commit crime.
Madam Mayor, the next question is, how does the Council propose to go about ensuring the recruitment of more informed, highly skilled staff and also the provision of best training for everyone working with young people to ensure
Who, I would say? Do you want me to call him over, love? Yeah, he's walking past now.
and responding effectively to signs of inappropriate, abusive...
Did you like sharing people's private information with Mr. Wilby, Mr. Sykes?
Do you like visiting No View with Cyril Smith?
to combat it, especially in residential childcare services, education and youth provision. And that's for legal Gerard.
You're young lad there, right, Dad?
Yeah, I am, yeah. I apologise if I've swore.
Well, ensuring we have well-trained, highly skilled social workers is a priority for this council.
Where are they then?
Everything we in our power to ensure we recruit the best possible people. Ask yourself the question now tonight about whether you'd be attracted to work in Oldham as a social worker. We need your support. We need your commitment. We need everybody to take responsibility for safeguarding in the council.
Everyone but you lot.
We test all of the applicants' abilities to undertake their roles. We want to encourage people to work in Oldham. We want to make Oldham a great place for young people to grow up and people to come and practice social work to protect them. After people start working for us, they go through a full and detailed induction, they get continuous training, and the product of that work is demonstrated in
Yeah, they will, Joe.
in our Ofsted.
Run, Forest,
You're an absolute angel. Thank you very, very, very much.
By the government-appointed experts. Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, the next question is submitted by Jackie Stanton.
Hooray! Yeah, she's brilliant, Jackie Stanton. Yeah, we'll let everybody see Jackie. She was, yeah, no wonder Howard's gone out. Go on, Jack.
Madam Mayor, just before I read the question, Madam Mayor, it would have been absolutely amazing tonight if the panel could have just answered a question instead of reading. I'm sure the leader and chief exec will read their replies. So, will the leader of the council and the chief executive admit to the public of Oldham that neither they nor their cabinet or their directors are capable of dealing with the horrific findings published in the Child Sexual Exploitation Report? Will they refer themselves to the government?
Yes!
Thousands of Oldham children. And will you seek and promise tonight that you will seek advice and guidance from the government?
Go on, Jackie!
Responding to the review, the work has been undertaken. I'm confident that we continue to improve, and this has been referenced by Ofsted over the past 2 years.
Tom, yeah, I know.
I've got to shoot, guys.
Take care, Billy. Take care, Billy. Stay safe, lad. You got what? Right. Yeah, no, yeah, debate on Thursday in Parliament.
See you next week. Take care, keep fighting.
Yeah, keep safe.
Alright, you got me up here. If you ever need me, come to me all up, yeah?
But that is not in the best interest of the young people of this borough. They need to have trust in local services, and we need to rebuild that trust.
Do you know, there are many from the Asian community who are here this evening. And do you know what the council have done? Do you want to show me where they are? Where all they came from? There's lots of people here from the Asian community who are here to support the victims, right? And what they've done, they've segregated them. Or they've been told to hide. Harry Castle, you're talking rubbish!
Is Trevor Baxter here? I'll ask the question for him. In March 2020...
I can't go for a walk and film this at the same time.
Answering concerns about OMBC's investigation into CSE. In a response, Dr. Wilkins stated, soon after allegations of malpractice around child sexual exploitation first surfaced on social media, an independent review into historic safeguarding practice was jointly commissioned by Oldham Council and Oldham Safeguarding Partnership. So my question is
If other people, social media users, etc., and presumably non-OMBC staff, weren't aware of potential malpractice.
And don't forget Oldham MPs like Jim McMahon.
On social media before anything was done.
And Debbie Abrams.
And an independent review. If there was no cover-up as suggested by the recent reports.
Thank you. So it makes clear that the Council and Greater Manchester Police were aware of CSE as an issue in Oldham and that we're working hard to tackle it and for the risk to local people. The way we deal with child exploitation has changed significantly.
Yes, there are, Bernie Wood. There are a lot in the Pakistani community who are absolutely appalled at this. I want to know who thinks it's a good idea that they segregate the Muslim community. I want to know who thinks it's a good idea. Excuse me, do you know that there's Asian people, Muslims watching this from another room?
The next question is from John Reed.
Across the way there. Do you know about that? Well, there's plenty of room for them because there's standing room here. Why are they not allowed in here? Can you go and find out, please?
Which councillors met to discuss this and what was their reasoning for taking action?
Thank you. The review team and the report are absolutely clear on this issue and the journalist inquiry was not quashed. The review finds no evidence that Journalist A nor the BBC colluded with the council in not highlighting the potential threat presented by shisha bars. It also finds that information...
They wanted to watch it in there. They said that, have they? Or security have said that. I tell you what. Can you go and have a look for us, please?
It finds nothing to support the assertion that journalist A and leader A colluded to hide from the public the potential threat presented by shisha bars and child sexual exploitation. I hope that those repeating allegations of a couple take time to read the review team's findings directly in the report. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, we've had another question submitted by a victim which has been anonymised to pretend identity. And the question is, will the girls affected and mentioned in the report be compensated?
Thank you to the woman that submitted the question. Obviously, as with Sam, I'd like to apologise for the failures of the council in keeping you safe as a child.
Will they be compensated? Yeah, there are.
Want to support you, but for that, I am deeply sorry. In terms of compensation, we would advise you to seek independent legal advice to ensure you get the help
Welcome.
and support that you're entitled to. We can help put you in touch with the advocacy services or support organisations who can help to do this, and we have done that and offered this. Thank you.
Firstly, I again would like to apologise for the terrible experiences that you've had. We let you down, and for that we are truly...
Will they be compensated, was the question.
I'm unable to comment on any litigation or compensation matters. I would encourage her to speak to an officer or contact her so that we can see if there's anything we can do to further investigate her case. If there are any lines of inquiry, the operation...
Welcome, lads. Welcome. Welcome, lads. Welcome.
The next question is also anonymous, and I'll read it out. It's quite a lengthy question. Residents of Oldham welcome this report, enabling the testimonies of victims to be known. Acknowledging that they were fundamentally let down by the people meant to protect them is a big step towards them receiving acknowledgement that they are innocent victims and did nothing wrong. The report highlights there were fundamental
That were Pam Byrne. Waste of space. Tory.
With that said,
No, she's still a waste of space though, but yeah.
and further changes are no doubt being made as a direct result of the report. The report clearly states there is no evidence whatsoever of any cover-up.
What do you think you do?
and created a fractious town to live, with sections of our community being targeted with hate crime. Can the council give assurances that this group of people communicating and spreading lies
Yeah, BNP peeps in, yeah.
will face legal charges? The Malicious Communications Act states sending a message that is known to be false via a public electronic communications.
Yeah, and I had to go and have an interview under caution because of that, which was then retracted. And Paul Bootserick and Roger Meir all written. Excuse me, what is it your role? What is your role?
I work in the council as head of public protection.
He works in the council as head of public protection. You didn't protect that lady though when she went running out. Why didn't you safeguard her?
We have done. We've got her details.
But you did hold her.
No, but I can't hold somebody against the will.
You did hold her though with security as well.
Is to ask her if she wanted some victim support help to those ladies at the back.
Yeah.
Trying to talk to her.
Amanda Cheriton, why don't you let him answer for himself? He's here! He's there!
Yeah.
Let him answer!
She asked me to do that. She asked to stand up.
Yes, she did, yeah.
And then she said, right, I've done my bit now, I want to go. I did catch the police liaison officer who was outside, and he got their name and the date of birth. And because she put the question in on email, we've got her email address as well.
Right, so you're going to follow up with that?
We haven't got her address, but I'm hoping, with all what I've just told you we've got, we can make that contact both ourselves and GMP. GMP have got a date of birth and her name. So that's what we did. But we came down there and she was off.
Yeah, but the amount of stuff that was hounding her.
I wasn't hounding her, I was just trying to ask her.
Security.
No, I was just trying to ask her if she wanted some help.
She would have been worked up with that to do
Yeah,
that. She was hounded like that.
No, I wasn't
She just wanted to get fresh air. That's what she's doing.
Amanda Cheriton, we don't believe you! We don't believe a word!
No, she wanted to.
But being hounded by everybody.
We tried our best to get them.
The question is, with the report finding zero evidence of a cover-up, will the councillors take legal action against the people behind the defamatory statements made on social
We know that there are people spreading untrue information.
Oh, stop repeating the same shit.
As I said earlier, our focus now as a council has to be on restoring confidence.
Roger Meir saying, bring it on.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, the next question is from Peter Davis.
Whoa! There he is.
Go on, Peter, ask your own question.
Come on, BNP! Loser! Loser! BNPP!
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, everybody, for allowing me to ask this question. My question is, did any councillors, council leaders cover up any paedophilia activity at all? Did any councillors or council leaders try to cover up any paedophilia activity to secure votes? Can anybody please answer that question?
I'll answer it for you, yeah!
It's your ass you to ask that!
She's just reading a script. Well, we might as well just talk over it because she's talking a load of shit anyway, ain't she? Sorry, I swore again. Why didn't you do enough? Why didn't you do enough? Why?
Madam Mayor, the next question is another question that's been anonymised. It's been submitted by a victim of CSE. Madam Mayor, the next question is victim of CSE? Where are the rest of the failures that have not been mentioned? What comes after an apology, as an apology is not good enough?
No, it's not.
What happens next? We get told we're sorry, but it all goes away. It's a question to the Leader of the Council.
Thank you. And again, I'd also like to apologise.
Oh, for God's sake. I'm just going to ask you one question. Do you accept this apology? Right, there you go. You go for a cigarette, sweetheart. I'm going to have a go on my puff. Yeah, I know.
Madam Mayor, the next question has been submitted by Anita Law. Does Anita Law want to ask her own question? Yeah.
I've just asked Sam, does she accept their apology? And the answer is an outright no.
Respect to you. Respect to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. After many delays, the report is now upon us. I do hope that after statements of apologies, which we keep getting to the abused, and phrases such as lessons are to be learned from those involved, can never be enough for those that have suffered such abuse. I do hope that these young girls, who are now ladies, are rightly compensated financially and given the respect they so rightly deserve. And all council staff whom have had their names redacted in this report, which we know who they are severely dealt with. Stand up to these people that are being abused and resign. This would be the most respectful thing to do. Let me just say one thing. It's not about you, or you, or you, or the panel there, or me. It's about the children. Thank you.
No, not really. No, not really. Not from anybody here. She doesn't. Yeah, no. She doesn't want any support from anybody here.
Because this review was never about something like party politics or about politicians. This review and the outcome of this is about those victims, and it's about those who
Justice! Where's the justice then? Where's the justice then?
It's coming up by Birmingham's Labour Party.
That was a fantastic question. It was from Anita Law.
What Anita said is about protecting children now and making sure that the public can have confidence in what is being done to protect children.
We have no confidence in this council, Andy Burnham, and no confidence in you.
I will oversee the full preparation with respect to those who think and I will follow that through.
How dare you thank Sean Fielding for what he's done? How dare you thank him for what he's done?
We wouldn't now have a force-fight unit. We wouldn't have seen arrests in Manchester, charges in Rochdale. We wouldn't have seen
And you wouldn't have had Sophie's testimony if it weren't for herself.
If we have to work together, and we need to work together.
Need to work together.
To secure children today. That is why I commissioned this report in 2017.
Come on!
But I did it because I wanted to be sure that the spotlight was shot.
Then it's like cutting your arms.
People have answers that they haven't hitherto received.
investigation
That's
then.
why I commissioned this report.
Andy Burnham, call for a public criminal investigation.
We need prosecution! Prosecutions, not apologies!
Members will now have an opportunity to ask a question of the panel. Can I ask members to indicate if they wish to ask a question?
Your daughter's never heard anything about interventions. Can I ask which school she goes to, Jar? Is she willing to say which school she goes to?
Oh, she's alive.
Statement that CSE is still continuing. Thank you.
Yes.
Is that woman actually laughing, Warren? Does she find it funny?
We're going to take 3 or 4 questions at once and then respond to them, how we did with the public questions, and then there'll be a response.
Wilkinson's Hamlet.
Do you remember this council being open and honest and transparent? Here's Mark Wilkinson from Failsworth Independence.
The question is for Chief Superintendent Bowie. The question concerns Sam, and I ask this question with her permission. Could you please explain when offender H was arrested and the implicated 2 other suspects, namely F and J, why neither have ever been arrested or interviewed? I appreciate this was evidence of a co-accused, but it was corroborated with forensic analysis at the scene. Samantha only discovered this information herself in March this year, which appears to be a clear failure by the police involved to keep this lady updated. Following on from this, I would also like to inquire why just 3 years on from this horrific event, with the case still unresolved and ongoing, was the evidence disposed of. Thank you, Madam.
Okay then, so the next question please from Councillor Hamlet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Taking 4 or 5 questions at once and there'll be a response from all. We've felt for many years, and their family will also feel this. The child is still excluded. This review has provided a report for examples of cases where women were seriously failed by GMP and Oldham Council, not least the horrific experiences and lack of support given to Sophie, who I now believe is called Sam. Could you explain what additional support beyond that which is already on offer to the victims and their families is being provided to them by the council and GMP to help them and their trauma? If more people are later found to have been failed by GMP and Oldham Council, for example, by contacting independent helpline, is there a strategy in place to support them? Thank you.
Thank you. Call on Councillor Chris Lester.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. So in 2015,
upon first being elected to this council, I became a member of the licensing committee, and I've served on the licensing committee and the driver licensing panel since then. I'm mindful that this report highlights work by the licensing committee early in 2015 in relation to safeguarding, and my own experience of the licensing committee in relation to the committee's desire to ensure that users of licensed vehicles are properly and appropriately safeguarded has never caused me to question the relevant policies and updates to these policies, particularly surrounding safeguarding and ensuring only fit and proper people are allowed to drive a vehicle licensed by this council. Similarly, I've never had to question decisions to revoke licences where a relevant driver has allegedly breached safeguarding rules, or their alleged conduct has been such that it has called into question as to whether they're a fit and proper person. The evidential threshold being a balance of probabilities. However, one case in particular has caused me great consternation, not because of the committee's actions, which was to immediately revoke the licence of the male driver who allegedly propositioned a vulnerable male customer to engage in sex acts with him, but the fact that upon appeal, the magistrates decided to overturn the committee's decision and return that driver's licence. It's fair to say that the magistrates' court are very hit and miss in relation to appeals, and I will simply pose the question as to whether magistrates hearing these cases are appropriately trained to understand taxi licensing regulations, are appropriately mindful of the lower evidential threshold for licensing, along with the safeguarding rationales being used by the committee to make these decisions. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Would you like to respond?
There's been a number of questions there, so I'll try to kind of cover the pertinent points of the different ones. The first question was, does CSE still exist, and is CSE still a problem? And it would be very naive of anybody to sit here and say there is no CSE. However, what we do have is much better joined up multi-agency approach to it, which has been outlined in today's meeting. The information sharing is far superior to what it was. I am confident that someone who would make an allegation at this time in Oldham would receive a significantly different level of service to anybody who would have received it back at the time of the review.
What about the people?
I've been asked also to comment on the investigation into Sam and the offenders H, F and J. Clearly, the report has identified a number of failures in the investigation that took place, including some in relation to offenders H, F and J.
They weren't failures, they were cover-ups.
That will all be reviewed as part of Operation Sherwood as we review the investigations to see what evidential messes we've had, and to ensure that whoever has committed these heinous crimes against the children of this borough are pursued to the full might of the law, and for that you have my reassurance. You asked also around additional support. I can give you an update that as top of the daily support that is now in place through the complex safeguarding hubs that I detailed in a previous answer this evening. In the run-up to this report, I have met personally with senior leaders at the local authority to ensure that whatever support is required is provided, not only to the victims that we know about, but to any new victims who may come forward as a result. And I can give you categoric reassurance that we will not falter in providing the support that we need to give to those victims we're aware of and anybody else that comes forward. Obviously, it's not for me to comment on the intricacies of the magistrates and the taxi licensing, so I'm going to leave that with you.
They've got the central heating in here, by the way, so everybody's nearly passing out. Daily support, yeah.
I'm still waiting for Councillor Gloucester. It's not acceptable if decisions of councils are being undermined at that level.
I'm still waiting for it.
So I will undertake on the back of your intervention.
We've been offered nothing.
They've been offered nothing.
Bench to raise your concerns
I know.
And I will endeavour to get a
Resign!
You know, Jane's been given a referral in the same slow process like everybody else. She's waiting for it now. She said.
Is anybody else in this part of the room wants to speak?
Every councillor in this chamber should be asking questions.
Especially you over there, Labour. You've all been whipped to death. Can you not open your mouths?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is really difficult because I was on the council in 2008. I first got elected to the council in 2008.
She first got elected in 2008. Resign!
Where we were discussing children looked after and safeguarding issues. So after reading and hearing what the public has said tonight and seeing the social media posts, it makes me feel sick. My stomach sinks my stomach to realise that I, along with others, had been deceived.
Yes, you have been deceived.
When I got elected in 2008, and still 12 years later, I'm one. But are we doing the right thing? If we can't look after other children who are not looked after, then where do we go next?
Special measures.
I keep thinking, did I miss something? Should I ask more questions for an answer when I was told everything was okay? I believed officers. Everything was clearly not okay. There are a whole host of issues that were not being investigated. I want to say to Sophie and all the other victims and those who have said such stuff tonight, please hear me when I say I promise you I didn't know about any of this. I know you were disbelieved, not once, but many times. Being disbelieved feels like being kicked in the solar plexus. You're in a state of shock. Wanting to scream that you are not lying and nobody believes you. They don't listen to you. You're only young and making it up. But you know you aren't making it up. Why are people making decisions for you when you can actually make your own? We have been let down so many times by the council, GMP and the police and crime commissioner.
For 15 years!
Saying sorry does not help you in any way, shape or form. But what will help, I believe, is that you know it is out in the open now. And if there are any other victims out there, that they can come forward and explain what has happened to you and others and get it investigated. Now, Madam Mayor, to my questions. How could this happen? Why was there such a lack of joined up work when the reports were made to the council by GMP and by
What we're doing?
and it wasn't acted upon? And what are both organisations going to do to reassure victims that they can come forward and that what they say will be believed?
It's easy, you listen!
Organisations going to do to catch these sick perpetrators? Thank you for making that. Ladies and gentlemen, can I just once again remind
It's not a courtesy. Stop shouting and hear the answer. The next question is from Councillor Hogan.
Go on, Brian! Go on, Brian!
If I may just, before my question, Madam Mayor, just ask for some clarification, maybe some advice, maybe some working this better, because I don't think bundling these questions together is doing us any favours. No. Questions are being forgotten before the answers are given out. There's people in here tonight, so we maybe round it, but there's people in here tonight that have spent their evening wanting answers, so we need it to be as clear and concise as possible. So pooling things together isn't giving these people answers, which is why probably they're in the mood that they're in. Because all evening it's been whiffle and waffle and no real answers.
It's Brian Harbin from Fails with Independence.
You're pooling questions together and things are getting mixed up and the answers aren't being clear enough. So can we go to a question and an answer? Yes! Well, and my question on that topic, my question will be one that wasn't answered before. Who was responsible for telling the review team not to interview Sam? It's a very important question. We need to identify an individual and find out what's happening. So who are the people responsible for trying to stop Sam being interviewed by this review team?
Name!
Name and shame!
Answer the question!
That's a liar.
That's a lie.
Liar!
That's a lie!
Liar! Liar!
That's not true! I heard it myself!
You are telling barefaced lies!
That is simply not true, sir! With all due respect, I have heard it myself! And so
You're telling barefaced lies now!
You are lying to us, because I have heard it myself! Stop smiling! It's not funny!
You've got smirks on the face.
Seriously, don't lie to us! Please don't lie to us!
In relation to corporate parenting and about...
No! You can answer this question!
Corporate responsibility for our looked after children is one of the most important things responsibility in the council, and I hope nobody is told that everything is okay, because children are always vulnerable children.
I have to face him because he's a bullshit liar.
Nobody's been told that. But we are working very hard with our corporate parenting panel to publicise...
Who stopped Sophie from giving her testimony? Answer the question! Answer the question!
I can say that there was no attempt to prevent Samantha. Her case was brought by the council.
You're a barefaced liar! You're a barefaced liar, sir! You're a barefaced liar! Ask her yourself! Ask her yourself! Have you got the nerve? Point of order! Point of order! She's in this room and you're barefaced lying to her! You are barefaced lying to her! You are barefaced lying to her! And she's in this room! You are barefaced lying to her! No, because you don't know the answer. You weren't there. You weren't there, Andy Burnham. You weren't there. You can't answer this question. We've got a recording of it. You weren't there. We have got Gary Ridgway stating. truth. Sorry, Brian.
To delay the review, to allow the further victim testimony.
You had no choice. She exposed it on Sky TV. You had no choice. You're a barefaced liar, Burnham.
That was the report back, and it left us. Some people said that was done for political reasons.
Yes, it was.
It was done to provide the extra time for the testimony to be given. And I'm answering that directly because I want that to be known from my point of view.
You weren't there and you haven't answered the question. You have not answered the question. Elaine, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about, love. You don't know what you're talking about. Quiet! You said if she was interviewed, she would commit suicide. That is what you said. You are nothing but disgusting, vile people. And I hope you can't fucking sleep tonight. And that's me swearing. Sorry, Sam, I'm fuming. I'm fuming, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for swearing. Can we just have a bit of truth?
I've heard you say on a number of occasions now that if you don't deem something good enough for your own child, you don't deem it good enough for the children of this borough. Are you accepting of this report outing failing after failing, apology after apology? Is that acceptable for those then children, now adults? Doing things differently, moving forward, is of no use to the victims of this report. What would you want to happen as a mother, as a parent? Is it really politics before safety? Is it counsellor before parent?
That was Lucia from the Failsworth Independent. Sorry, I meant to film her, but sorry, I'm just wound up. Sorry.
I've been leader for only 8 weeks, but I took that view. If I were doing it, and I took that view when I was leader for education as well, and at the council a few years ago, before I had a child, but the way I view it as politics, and I think we should all view this as councillors, whether you have children or not, is it acceptable to your child? Because if it's not, then it's not acceptable for anybody in this borough. But also, if we look at it another way, accepting of adult social care. Would I want my parents to be treated in that way? And if I don't, then that's not acceptable either.
Open public inquiry!
I am not here, and I said this earlier, I'm not about to sit here and defend the indefensible. What has gone on in that report, and the failings were appalling. And I accept that. I was horrified when I read that report, and particularly when it's in relation to Sam.
Well, then tell the truth, Amanda, and admit it was covered up. Tell the truth, Amanda.
To prison. I view it as a person that commits a child against a crime is the worst person on earth.
Why are you coming up then?
Amanda, just tell the truth then and admit it.
I'll just as bad.
I hope and I want GMP to go back and find them all and Council Wilkinson. For the terrible, inhumane things that they did
stop covering up then?
The next question is Councillor Murphy and Councillor Arnott. Councillor Wilkinson, I did see you raise your hand, but that's the second question. So now we've covered this quarter, we'll move on to the second quarter. Just keep your hands up for me while the questions are. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I'm sorry for swearing. I'm sorry for swearing. I apologise for swearing.
Appendix B, 52 were not interviewed, 39 not approached, 1 died, and the remainder declined to respond.
Who's asking his question?
There are some omissions, 13 officers
All right,
in GMP,
okay.
including the Assistant Chief Constable and someone labelled the responsible detective, all presumably involved in at least one of these 11 cases. OMBC's legal service officers, OMBC Executive Director in charge of
right?
2, which targeted
Do you want to go for a cigarette?
which targeted kids missing from care in the early 2000s. Keith Baz, Journalist B, the Liberal Democrat leader, the Conservative leader, the chair of licensing panel, a manager in the local Safeguarding Children Board, the managing director of Children's Services at OMBC, Leader B, the managing director.
That's the person that's asking a question now there.
Director A, Advocate for Sophie, Mr. K, and the Director of Children's Services at OMBC. How can we have assurance if there's doubts about the full story being told? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. So, I can't speak for the review team, but I can only tell you what they said to me.
I can't speak for the review, but they're your mates.
What we've heard tonight is that they reviewed thousands and thousands of documents.
That's rubbish.
By Oldham Council.
That's rubbish. What, all redacted, Andy? Everyone redacted, do you remember that?
They were and have been under pressure to get the report out.
Bullshit.
Pressure from this community not to leave a long delay when everyone said, when is the report coming out? And what I will say in answer to your question, as tonight is making clear, this is not the end of the story. This is, in some ways, this opens out the issue. I think as Councillor Williamson said before, it breaks the issue out. And this issue needed, people could listen, this issue needed to be broken out. This had to happen. This kind of difficult exchange had to happen. And once the issue is broken out into the open, then the evidence can be followed.
Open public inquiry!
With regard to Greater Manchester Police, I can assure everybody here tonight that Operation Sherwood will be funded and supported.
Operation Sherwood won't be worth the paper it's not written on yet.
To bring perpetrators to justice, as we are seeing with Operation Lytton and as we are seeing with Operation Green Jacket. It's easy to say nothing is being done, but people have been arrested who thought
What, darling? Yeah, no.
Here, it is incumbent on all authorities and individuals who have been implicated in this report to follow through every part of this report and to continue further inquiries where those are justified.
What they call it, they didn't investigate.
But I would say again, at some point,
Crimes office or something.
we have to come back to a degree of working together.
One of your questions. Why did they not interview the people that... Yeah, why did they not interview anybody from the professional standards regarding this? Yeah. So that again. Right.
To our children, we should not be conducting a debate in this fashion, in this way. We need now to start to deal with the issues, as difficult as they are, make reparation where we need to, and follow things through to the full.
We need prosecution!
Not one victim wants Greater Manchester Police involved in anything. There is no trust with Greater Manchester Police, Andy Burnham, and that leads you as well. I'll have no voice tomorrow, me.
Will Operation Sherwood be as good as Operation Hexagon? Will we have the same results? Shutting people up? Is that what we'll have?
This report was commissioned as an assurance review to assure and reassure the public.
That's a feel for this woman here, actually. She didn't know nothing about it. She's been led down the garden path, that woman there.
Correct. This report has brought to light an astonishing catalogue of unforgivable conduct, poor governance and outright incompetence at best. This has allowed unspeakable crimes against children in this borough to be continued by twisted and evil individuals and groups of men for years. And as the former leader of the council, Aruz Shah, stated only recently, are continuing. In Oldham, we are here now, whether we like it or not, because of hundreds of concerned residents. As individuals, small, newly formed political parties and loose alliances started to speak out against what they saw as a town becoming steeped in the mire of grooming, sexual abuse and the rape of young girls, and a police service and council who would not or would not act on their behalf. They have forced this council to examine its conduct historically and in the present, and they have, and that was the right thing to do. In return, they have been treated appallingly. Many have been branded racist, criminals, BNP supporters and far-right activists. But it is they that have forced this inquiry. Whether that is an uncomfortable truth, it is the truth. Correct. These people have not campaigned for the far right. They have campaigned for the right thing. The findings of this report do not assure or reassure the Oldham public. The narrow terms of reference, scope and content of the review have been criticised from all quarters, including damning condemnation from the highly respected campaigner, Maggie Oliver. In March, with further delays announced in the report's publication, I called for government intervention in a motion laid before this council. It carried the full support of all opposition parties, for which they should be commended. We will again call for a full and broad-ranging independent public inquiry, alongside or independent of any national initiatives that the government may introduce or conduct.
You need to wake Labour up then.
This guy here.
The entire panel or any of the panel. Mayor Burnham's previous answer aside, I accept that.
Dave Arnott, I think. Yeah, Dave Arnott.
Feel that the Oldham public would not be well or better served by an independent public inquiry that addresses their concerns to their satisfaction. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Well said!
I would support another review of Oldham Council in relation to historic practices of CSE. We've worked to years of an independent review.
She said she won't support it. She's not going to support it. There you go, folks. You've heard her.